I am so lucky to possess such a good evil man who loves his evil wife. A woman sits calmly at a heavy wooden desk in rural Bavaria, writing a love letter while Europe chokes on the smoke of 1943. She dips her steel pen into the inkwell, writing out the rest of the page with genuine affection. She folds the heavy parchment, seals the envelope with a steady hand, and steps outside into the fresh air. The crisp scent of growing herbs in her garden stands in sharp contrast to the ash falling over the continent. Her name was Margarete Himmler, the legally wedded wife of Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS and chief architect of the Holocaust. By this point in the war, the death camps her husband built were murdering thousands of human beings every single day. The SS network had grown to include over 40,000 camps and ghettos stretching across occupied Europe. Margarete was no sheltered housewife hiding from the slaughter happening just over the horizon. She spent her mornings tending to medicinal plants, carefully pruning leaves and watering roots in the quiet sunlight. Then she spent her afternoons taking voluntary tourist visits to the very concentration camps her husband ran. She walked through the gates of nearby Dachau, looking directly at the starving prisoners behind the barbed wire. When the tour ended, she voluntarily returned to her Bavarian household and went right back to her daily chores. 17 years before those daily chores outside Dachau, this same woman sat alone in a Bad Reichenhall hotel. The year was 1926. Margarete Boden was 34 years old. She carried heavy baggage. Born in the Polish village of Gonkarzewo, she abandoned provincial life early. During the First World War, she patched up soldiers right on the front line. She treated torn flesh every single day. That trauma forged a hard independence. She survived a failed first marriage and then took a massive risk. While the Weimar Republic faced total economic collapse, Margarete built her own life. She secured funding from her father. She opened a private medical clinic right in the heart of Berlin. Hyperinflation wiped out the savings of millions, yet her clinic pulled in steady profits. She achieved complete financial freedom before she even met her future husband. Now she rested at a mountain resort. A 25-year-old guy noticed her. This scrawny, doubting youth sitting across the lobby was Heinrich Himmler. He constantly adjusted his round glasses with nervous fingers, looking exactly like the deeply insecure former farmer he actually was. While this socially awkward guy would eventually transform into a cold bureaucrat of death, right now he possessed zero personal power. The confident 34-year-old woman simply walked over and took total control of their initial interaction. She easily commanded the space around this 25-year-old radical who had recently joined the rising National Socialist movement. He held absolutely no practical experience with relationships before this fateful Bavarian vacation. Otto Strasser, a high-ranking insider within the early party ranks, provided heavy historical proof regarding the strange imbalance between them. Strasser bluntly confirmed that the worldly clinic owner actively seduced the younger man. She completely took the lead, becoming the very first woman he had ever intimately known. Himmler did not just submit to an older woman's physical lead. His attraction fed on a darker, shared obsession. Two people walked to the altar in July 1928. Their bond grew from rigid daily routines, not romance. Both tracked every single pfennig. They sat for hours at the kitchen table, drafting pedantic lists of daily household expenses. Both preached the virtues of homeopathy and organic farming. In 1920s Germany, this agrarian lifestyle tied directly into the early nationalist blood and soil movement. They bonded over herbal medicine and rural purity. They shared a bitter, consuming hatred for Jews. This ideological project quickly broke his family apart. The young party member wrote letters praising her blonde hair and pale blue eyes. He called her the perfect Germanic wife. But his conservative Catholic parents in Munich despised the match. They hated her Protestant background. They harshly judged her previous divorce and the scandalous 7-year age gap. His father demanded he cancel the wedding entirely. He refused. The marriage day finally arrived. The wooden church pews sat largely empty. Only Margarette's father and brother stood near the couple to witness the vows. No one else came to celebrate. The groom traded his entire past for this radical union. The guest count from his side of the family was exactly 0. She signed her NSDAP membership application voluntarily, proving the family boycott meant nothing. At a time when female party members were rare, nobody pressured the new bride to officially join. By August 1928, she sat down to write a revealing letter to her husband. With the neat, deliberate handwriting of an ordinary housewife, she targeted her former business partner. He was a Jewish gynecologist from her Berlin clinic named Bernhard Hauschild, whom she casually dismissed. She wasn't performing for an audience. This ideological family expanded further in August 1929, when Margarete gave birth to Gudrun. Margarete sold her shares in the Berlin clinic for 12,000 Reichmarks. By August 1929, she had a new daughter, Gudrun, and a new plan. She packed up the infant and moved the family away from the city. They bought a house in Waldtrudering on the Munich outskirts. Heinrich hauled in coops for dozens of chickens. Margarete planted root vegetables. The yard smelled of damp earth and wet bird feed. They tried to live out a romantic peasant fantasy. It failed fast. The soil yielded almost nothing, and the chickens quickly died. The agricultural project collapsed in less than a year. They expected a simple rural existence. In reality, their future lifestyle was funded by direct theft. Heinrich's rank expanded fast. He took control of the SS apparatus. The organization's new headquarters sat close by in Munich. His official state salary was too small to maintain an elite standard of living. The regime offered a different solution. The couple enriched themselves using the Reinhardt Fund. They financed their comfort with property stripped from Jewish families before deportation. Accountants logged the stolen assets in thick binders. The financial ledgers confirmed the exact origin of their money. These documents survived the war. That documented wealth bought an elite status, and the wife of the SS chief had to maintain a high society facade in Berlin. Wives of senior SS commanders gathered every Wednesday afternoon to carve out their positions in the new state hierarchy. Lena Heydrich openly looked across the parlor and described her hostess to the social circle as nothing more than size 50 underwear. Porcelain cups clinked during these weekly coffee meetings. Margarete held the highest rank among them, but her husband's title offered zero protection against vicious personal attacks from the women sitting at her own table. Lena, married to the man who would later organize the mass murders across Europe, despised Margarete. The top ranks of the regime resembled a cruel terrarium where women tore each other apart for influence. Decades later, Lena still publicly mocked Margarete as a narrow-minded woman trapped indoors by crippling agoraphobia. The social humiliation extended far beyond the closed gatherings of officers' wives. During a diplomatic reception in 1937, German journalist Bella Fromm observed the SS chief's wife from across the hall and took out her notebook. The reporter wrote in her private diary that Margarete just looked dull and overweight. Before 1936, Heinrich Himmler had no say in his own living room. While the other wives laughed behind her back, Margarete kept strict control at home. She managed her husband through rigid domestic mechanics. She pushed him around. She dictated every single detail of their private space. Baldur von Schirach, the former Hitler youth leader, remembered this bizarre dynamic perfectly. This man later directed the deportation of 65,000 Viennese Jews, but he openly laughed at Himmler's weakness. Schirach noted in his memoirs that the police chief always yielded to his wife. The mass murderer was entirely whipped. And then he hired a secretary. The man Margarete seduced 15 years earlier now openly lived a double life. 2 children from a mistress, living in a separate house paid for by the state. Her domestic control cracked the moment 24-year-old Hedwig Potthast joined the office staff in 1936. Hedwig was young, warm, and entirely devoted to the SS chief. By 1938, she became his official mistress. Himmler arranged a private residence for her. He visited her openly, ignoring the usual rules of discretion. The entire inner circle knew about the arrangement long before his wife did. Meanwhile, Margarete remained in the empty family mansion. A heavy silence filled her rooms after the news finally broke. By February 1941, she knew everything. Yet she did not pack her bags. A divorce among high-ranking SS officers required the personal approval of the SS chief himself. A public split meant an unacceptable political scandal.
Margaret swallowed the humiliation just to maintain the facade. Hedwig gave birth to a son, Helga, in 1942. Later came a daughter, Nanette Dorothea. Margaret stayed trapped in her quiet house, stripped of her final zone of power. Himmler barely crossed the threshold anymore. He returned home only for short visits with his daughter.
Alienated from her husband, Margarete threw herself into Red Cross work, a path that led her straight to the barbed wire. The wife of Heinrich Himmler, wearing a crisp Red Cross colonel uniform, strode across the grounds of Dachau. She walked right through the main gates. She went to inspect the herb garden. Her pristine medical uniform stood in sharp contrast against the wooden barracks and the emaciated inmates. Dachau opened in 1933. By the end of the war, over 200,000 people passed through it. She saw the oldest part of this vast network. She did not flinch. Her tours did not stop in Germany. She traveled across the occupied territories, holding the rank of Oberstführerin. In March 1940, she visited Lodz and Warsaw in Poland. She kept a detailed diary during this trip. The handwritten pages reveal exactly what she thought of the starving Jewish population in the ghettos. She called them subhumans. She looked at the devastation caused by the invasion and described it simply as a mess that needed cleaning up. She saw the misery firsthand. She understood exactly what the occupation meant on the ground. She viewed these people as dirt. She also toured Ravensbrück, the designated concentration camp for women. She stood there and watched the inmates work in the dirt. Allied investigators later confirmed she was the only high-ranking SS wife who physically entered the camps. She did not just sit comfortably in the rear. She chose to cross the thresholds. She stared directly at the prisoners, fully absorbing the reality of her husband's daily routine. She returned home and stayed silent. While Margarete kept her mouth shut about the camps, her husband spent the spring of 1945 trying to save his own skin. May 23, 1945. British troops captured him near the city of Bremen. He had secretly attempted to negotiate a separate peace with the Western Allies, lost every title when Hitler found out, and was now trying to pass himself off as a low-ranking sergeant. Within hours of being taken into custody, he bit down hard on a cyanide capsule. That specific poison was standard military issue for top SS commanders in case they were caught. The man who held total control over millions of lives died gasping on a dirty floor in a borrowed uniform, dodging a trial. Margarete went on the run. Her escape ended in northern Italy 5 days after the official German surrender. She tried to vanish among the refugees in the narrow streets of Bolzano in South Tyrol. On May 13, 1945, Allied soldiers caught her. How did she justify herself during Allied interrogations? She shifted all blame to Hitler. She sat in the questioning room and played the ignorant housewife, claiming her husband merely followed orders. The interrogators already knew she had walked through the Dachau concentration camp herself. They had the records. But she kept her mouth shut about the things she saw. After testifying at the Nuremberg trials, she walked free in November 1946. Instead of showing remorse, she complained. She publicly whined that she and her daughter had been imprisoned and treated poorly. She actually used the word alleged to describe the crimes of her husband. She spent her post-war years portraying herself as the real victim. On August 25, 1967, her life came to an end. She died in Munich at the age of 73. After Margarete died in Munich, the primary witness to her true views remained behind: a personal diary. Researchers open these pages today looking for remorse, but they find only complaints about her own fate. An archivist opens a protective folder at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington. The facility holds millions of documents, yet this specific artifact reveals the quiet, domestic side of terror. Fingers carefully turn the yellowed paper. 122 pages. The handwritten entries span from 1937 to 1945. Across these years, there is not a single line of regret, just bitterness. Just a woman feeling overlooked and resentful. Terror does not just happen through official orders. It is sustained by conscious, everyday approval from those closest to it. She cooked for this nightmare. She wrote love letters to the camp architect. She knew exactly what her husband was building. She was not a bystander. She was an active participant who made a choice every single day. She looked at his work and decided the man responsible was still worth loving. 122 pages lie in the Washington archive as a documented fact that she chose this path herself.